at the clubhouse, you can go there, get a cup of coffee, sit by yourself around other people or talk with other people for a few minutes. It can be that simple. You can do that all the way up to what we're doing now and beyond. You can become a board of directors. You can become a board of the sky is the limit. And I love that so much. There aren't any other places like that I can think of.
That's the voice of Nishi, a member of a fairly brand new international clubhouse in Minnesota. They opened their doors in May, and our guests tonight are 4 of the people responsible for opening that clubhouse. An international clubhouse is kind of a one-stop shop. It's a place where members and staff work together side by side to operate all aspects of the clubhouse. Clubhouse can help with housing, employment, education, health and wellness, and so much more. How do you start one? Keep listening. Welcome to our podcast, Schizophrenia, 3 Moms in the Trenches. From the place where schizophrenia and real life collide. East Coast, West Coast, Middle America. With Miriam Feldman, Mindy Greiling, and Randy Kay. We are so excited to be here with episode 98 of Schizophrenia, 3 Moms in the Trenches. Ever since we did episode 30 and co-host, that was back in 2021, that was November of 2021, that we did an episode on international clubhouses with Joel Corcoran. And at that point, Mindy said, yeah, I wonder if we could start one. And it has happened, and we're going to talk about that tonight. So we're very excited because clubhouses are one of the important bricks in the foundation of recovery. Absolutely. And we'll learn all about it tonight. Before we do that, just if you're watching on YouTube, you're seeing 7 faces. Guys, you can wave hello. We're going to talk to you in about 3 minutes. And these are all the people from the brand new clubhouse. Is it in Ramsey County? Yes? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So you will tell us all about that. But first, welcome to the podcast. If you've never listened before, I'm Randy Kay here with Mindy Greiling and Mimi Feldman. And we are 3 moms. We each have a son with schizophrenia and other children as well. And we've written 3 books about it. I should actually put your books here, not just mine. Here you go. There you go. Here's our 3 books. That looks better. You can't see them all, but you will. I'll just pile them up here. And now, there's Mindy's. Okay, anyway. So we are turning our adjustment into advocacy, as many families do, so that we can help our loved ones and spread the word that you're not alone and there are things that we can do. We want to spread information and empathy. So I want to begin by thanking you for listening. If you've been listening before, this is episode 98. And we are very much looking forward to episode 99 in about a week, where we will talk about pooled trusts and other ways you can set up a plan. If you're wondering what will happen to your loved one after you're gone, we're bringing in an expert who's been here, who's actually my cousin, Danny, has explained Social Security to us in past episodes, and she is bringing in an expert to talk to us, and she'll be on the line, but just observing. So they've been preparing. I'm very excited about that. And for our 100th episode, we're going to talk with Cody Green, who has like a million gazillion followers. And we specifically want to talk with him about incarceration and schizophrenia. And we have episodes coming up. Many, many people have asked us to talk about keto diet, the ins and outs and ups and downs of that. So we are looking into that. And thank you for listening. And also thank you for your fan mail on Buzzsprout. I'm looking on my phone right now. Unfortunately, we can't answer the fan mail, but I want to acknowledge it. So from Buffalo, New York, I'm so grateful for you guys. Thank you. So you're welcome. From Greenbrier, Arkansas, just to let y'all know you're amazing. I work for a company that helps with this disorder. So thank you. I'm glad we're helpful to you. From Marietta, Ohio, your podcast may help me keep going. So thank you. And then someone from Portland asking about ketogenic therapy. I said we will work on an episode about that. And Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, commenting on our episode last time about cannabis. Says, thank you for the podcast on schizophrenia and cannabis. And the listener has 3 sons who's gone through cannabis-induced psychosis. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for writing. Thank you for listening. Brief update. If you listen to the podcast, you may know that my son, who I call Ben for publicity purposes, has been working his way, fingers crossed, out of the pre-trial incarceration world. And at the moment, I am, you know what I'm doing? I'm just daring to hope. It's sometimes hard to hope because when things go well, you kind of go, oh, but it could fall apart tomorrow. And he's working really hard at rebuilding his life, and you never know what tomorrow will bring, as we all know, but I am thinking of it as daring to hope. I'm enjoying the days. I'm enjoying his enthusiasm for trying to rebuild his life and hope it goes well. The worst that'll happen is I'll be wrong, but I am going to dare to hope. So that's where we are. And when things are a little more certain, we will keep you updated on how we did it so we can help. Mimi, anything to report over there besides you guys are boiling out there on the West Coast?
Podcast after podcast is steady and slow forward. So happy about that. I've been gone for a while. I'm down here painting a mural in Los Angeles. I've been gone 10 days and Nick's been just doing great, showing up to his appointments and his groups, and it's going well. No complaints.
That's awesome. And, you know, and shout out to all the professional caregivers who help our loved ones, because we can't do it alone. And the Clubhouse is on that list as well. Just my son is getting amazing job coaching. And so I'm so grateful for anyone who's chosen to go into this as a profession and wants to keep learning from the people they are caring for and from new information. And so gratitude and thanks. Mindy, how about you? You went on a trip. What would you like to share about that?
Well, you mentioned, the ups and downs. And 1 week before Jim got pneumonia, one of his wonderful workers, who is a behavioral health specialist, said she had never seen Jim doing so well in the 4 years she's been working with him. And then, as you know from the last episode, he got pneumonia, which really knocks anybody down, but especially someone on Clozaril, because that interacts with white blood cell counts as well. After 11 days in the hospital, Jim got home, and I should have let him rest. The doctor said you have to spend 2 or 3 days recovering at home for each day in the hospital, and that would have been a month. But no, I took him on a trip overseas 1 week later. We had planned it for months. He had his first passport. He's never been overseas. Yeah. Everybody else in our family travels a lot. And so he finally had his chance. So I thought, we're not going to miss this. So we went anyway. Little did I know, I did get a warning from actually Dr. Ken Duckworth, who I was the chief medical officer for NAMI. I was talking with him because he's going to be our guest in August, a little prep interview that he requested. And he did say, you should be aware that people with schizophrenia traveling, especially if they're going west to east, which we were, can have psychosis while traveling. So that was a warning. And we had psychosis with Jim actually going and coming from a place called the Isle of Man, a tiny little island that my great-grandmother was from, and in the Irish Sea. And Jim slept most of the time we were there because he was so tired, and still he considered the trip an 8.5 despite all those things. So now he's resting, but he's also back in the hospital because we overexerted, and he's just having a very hard time getting back on his feet. But when he does, I hope that he can manage to get to the brand new clubhouse in our county, Ramsey County, because it's so exciting that we have one. And that's what our whole program is about tonight. And as Randy said, we had the CEO of Clubhouse International on a couple of years ago. And after that, I actually contacted one of our guests here tonight, Chad Bolstrom, who is the Clubhouse director for Vail Communities and also their public policy director. And he helped to organize people to come to our Ramsey County listening session. We were asking the community, what are the gaps in our mental health system and how can we fill them? So you have to organize if you're going to get a clubhouse, I will say. I will also introduce Karina Forrest Perkins, who's the president and executive of Vail Communities. And she joined us even more recently than Chad. He was a psychologist and had become interested in keeping people out of the hospital. He worked at a hospital. And Margaret will tell you that he had a role in her getting involved in the clubhouse when we get a chance to talk with her. And then Karina has done many things, but she's been a Bush fellow in Minnesota, the executive director of NAMI, Oklahoma. She's just got a varied background and is a member of the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma or nationally, I'm not sure. So they just bring a variety of huge talents, but they would be the first ones to tell you that they are not the biggest players in clubhouses, because that's the magic and the strength. The strongest thing I think about clubhouses is that it's the members who run the clubhouses, and the staff is kind of the helpers and in the background. And of course, they do some very big things as well. But I'm going to start with Margaret, because when we had that listening session, Margaret was on the call. And so Margaret, could you talk to the viewers who are, as you heard, all around the country here, and some of them, a lot of them might not have clubhouses in their community. They might want to have them. So what kinds of things did you say on that Ramsey County listening session that helped to convince us to work on this?
Well, I just spoke as to how important it was to have a clubhouse in the community. When you come out of these hospitalization programs or even a day program, all of a sudden you have no more support program to really rely on. And you don't have that kind of structure or that kind of purpose that you did when you were in those programs. So having a clubhouse to go to every day gives you those programs, the structure. It gives you people to talk to who are just like yourself, who are working on recovery, and the community itself really envelops you into how you can recover. And so that's, for me, that's how I was able to recover. It took me a long time with a lot of medication changes and therapists, but I really tell people that the reason I was able to recover was because it wasn't just seeing a psychiatrist or just therapy, but it was having the medication, having the therapy, and having the clubhouse to support me.
And you can see how very convincing Margaret is. So Chad, could you tell us some about how you got that listening session together? Because when we came out of it, we had like 8 or 10 things that Ramsey County was charged to do from that listening session. But the number one action item was to get a clubhouse, and it came from that listening session. So how did you get that all together, Chad?
Well, I mean, first I want to say thanks for having us back. Congratulations on almost 100. I am so proud of you all and really grateful to have this opportunity to come back and talk about Clubhouse again. I'm hoping that you're going to hear tonight about how the Clubhouse really is, I think, a foundational element of a mental health system that hasn't really been built out. And I think, we all know how community makes a difference when you think about yourselves and kind of how much it helps to have, people like Randy and Mimi in your life, helping support you. That really is, it's the base of what the Clubhouse is, a place where people, want and need your your strengths and gifts to share. And I think really what we talked about, that initial day was just how the clubhouse really, it isn't a treatment, it isn't a therapy, it's a community intervention that utilizes the strengths of our members side by side with our staff and with our community around us to really, number one, make it okay to talk about mental health and mental wellness and the steps that are needed to make that recovery that Margaret, I think, kind of illuminated so well, possible. And then I think beyond that, being able to help communities to really figure out how they leverage to make a clubhouse possible in their community. Because, one of the things that I made the point that day was just, and the reality is we have 2 accredited clubhouses now coming on the brink of a third here in Minnesota. And I think really accreditation and clubhouses that are accredited are really kind of the backbone of how this model works and how we think it could work really in communities that are underserved right now.
Thank you. And I would like to encourage any listener to go back and listen to episode 30 for a more thorough explanation. But Chad or Karina or somebody or Nishi, can you just in a bit of a nutshell say exactly what the Clubhouse model is and how someone qualifies to be a member? Okay.
So sorry about that. So the clubhouse is, the way I see it, the clubhouse is basically
this is Nishi talking, by the way, if you're listening and you're a member of the clubhouse, right?
I am a member of the clubhouse.
Okay.
I describe to people, because it's so hard to describe something as vast and so unique as the clubhouse, right? When people say, what do you do at Vail? What is it like there? And it's like, well, it's not really like anything else, but you want like a shorthand layman's explanation for people who may not know anything. So the way I describe it is, it's like a community center for people with disabilities, but it's run more or less by the people with disabilities, and the staff are just sort of there to guide things along. And that's what I tell people. Whether or not it's accurate, I don't. If I need to change my definition, I don't know. But like,
everyone's, if you're not watching and you're listening, everyone's nodding their head, so you're doing great. Go ahead.
Thank you. So that's basically how I describe it. It's a place where like you can do virtually almost anything you want to put your mind to, in terms of not just projects, but also helping out with daily tasks. I mean, like things that like ordinarily you would hire a receptionist for, or you would hire an event planner, or you hire like somebody to come cook in the kitchen. Like all of them, the members do that, and almost exclusively, and it's all just on a voluntary, like, we want to do this. In fact, one of the standards, we have standards that sort of dictate like how the clubhouse should generally speaking be run. And one of them is that the clubhouse members do not get paid, because payment would basically undermine the whole thing. I thought about this because it's like, personally, I'm like, well, I'm doing stuff that could get paid, but then I'm like, wait a minute, this is not about getting money. This is not. Once you get into like it's a job and you're getting officially paid, it kind of undermines the purpose of a community, because we're all doing this to help each other and to help ourselves. So
that's great. And
kind of a long answer, but
I know that for a while, my son was, when he was 21 and first got out of his 5 hospitalizations in 1 year, he had nothing to do, and we got him into a clubhouse, and he only was there for a year, but in that year, he felt important. It was good to feel important. I think he ran the cash register on the snack bar, but then he also said, I like to write, and they made him the editor of the literary magazine. And suddenly he felt like he had strength and he could contribute something. And so I'm sure every clubhouse is different, but there also was available in that particular clubhouse called Bridge House. It's in Bridgeport, Connecticut. They also did, if you wanted to train for work, and I don't know if this is true in yours, but they did offer job coaching. And so if you learn how to work the cash register in the snack bar, then if you do want to get paid for that, we will help you get a job doing that, because now you have experience. So I guess it's as much I'm seeing nodding heads again, so I hope I nailed that. So it was helpful to my son's confidence, and he in particular didn't take advantage of the job coaching at that time, but others did. And I know in that case, it helped. So to be a member, who qualifies? How much does it cost? Who would like to answer that? Karina, you haven't spoken yet. You're muted. Okay.
I don't know if I'm the best one to answer some of these questions, but I can answer what I can do well. And that is that really, if you have had an experience with mental health challenges, a diagnosis for mental health illness, disorder, any type of interaction in your life where that struggle has become real for you, you are able to come to the clubhouse. There's no waiting list. There's no cost barrier. There's no cumbersome and invasive assessment that gets in your way. I think Chad and I have talked about this a lot. Both of us have been in the mental health and addiction fields I'm older than Chad, so quite a few years.
They're both very young,
No, and he's laughing. And we've always seen what the American healthcare system does with individuals who present with mental health challenges, and that is wait too long to intervene, and intervene only when there is a crisis that has emerged, typically. It's not that therapy or hospitalization or medication, it's not that anything's wrong with that. It's that it's too late when people finally get access to it. And one of the things that's so beautiful about the clubhouse is that it is upstream. It's a preventive practice. It's there for you every day of your life, not just the days that you're in crisis. It's about relationships. It's about self-worth. It's about the ability to reconnect with things in your life and neighborhood and community that have meaning to you, like other people can have. And you deserve the dignity of being able to have that regardless of what healthcare condition you have. And that's, to me, the beauty of the clubhouse.
Awesome.
All the people here are such champions for us when we got this new clubhouse. And Karina, I first met her at a clubhouse. And for people who are listening or who are not from Minnesota, Vail Communities has lots of different parts and programs. Clubhouses are only part of it. And the first day that I met Karina, though, I think you fell in love with clubhouses because we were touring one, and that was so very exciting. One thing, I'm not sure who wants to talk about it, but the programs that Randy was mentioning when we were all nodding our heads, there is a lot of international standardization of clubhouses as they become individual, but there are certain things that are vitally important and uniform across the world. So I don't know who would like to talk about that, but if you could talk, Chad could talk about that. And then maybe some of these programs in particular, like the work order day and the employment and all of those things, Margaret and Nishi could chime in on those. But Chad, first you could maybe set the groundwork with how are clubhouses certified and what essential things are common to all clubhouses.
Thanks, Mindy. And just to loop back, a few things about membership. Membership is free. It's also voluntary by nature. So our members, as Nishi talked about, they engage in the things that they're interested in and the things that they want to do. And that's a big part of why the Clubhouse model is so unique and different. And partly it relates hand in hand with what Mindy's talking about, these standards. There was 37 standards that have been established by clubhouses like Vail communities, like Vail's clubhouses across the globe. This is an international model that's been replicated in over 30 countries and 350 clubhouses around the globe. So this is not just a US phenomena or just a Minnesota thing, but really it's a model that's been shown to work. And part of how it works is by having all of these kind of elements that we recognize are important. First, we need to be able to allow our community to have autonomy and control over how we do what we do. So Nishi talked about members are part of our decision-making process, everything from being on our board of directors to being how we decide what we're going to do on that day and what we're going to make for lunch. Similarly, we have standards around employment and around education, around relationships, around kind of how our work order day, how we organize all the things that we do. Because the one thing that is universal about a clubhouse is if you walk into it, the vibe is distinctly different from any other mental health setting that you're going to go into. It's a space of hope. It's a space of energy, and it's a space of possibility, things that folks are successfully demonstrating on a daily basis. And I'd love to have Nishi and Margaret share a little bit today about some of the things that they're being successful in that go way beyond the clubhouse. Theater projects and work and things like that maybe started and germinated. They found some root in our community, some root around kind of their abilities and their confidence and their strengths, but really then grew beyond the clubhouse. And I think that's really the essential part that I want to bring home to everybody, is that a clubhouse is a community center. For some folks, it's a one-stop shop for how you can get support around your mental health recovery. But for many people, it's that baseline foundation that they build a life worth living. And I think we can all acknowledge that whenever we've made a change in our life, having something that helps us to make that step is important, but then also having that safety net if something goes wrong, that it's going to be there. It's going to not go away. It's not going to time out like most therapies or treatments do. It's just going to be available. So whether you walked out the door a month ago or a day ago or 12 years ago, you're still going to be welcomed back into that community that says, how do we help you to get your life in the space that you want it to go?
Awesome.
And I think really that's...
Yeah, so I do want to hear from Nishi and Margaret about their experience and what they are contributing to the clubhouse. But I also know that, before, we're not running out of time yet, but before you know it, we will. So I know Mimi's son, Nick, has never been in a clubhouse, and I'm not sure if there isn't one available. So we'll also want to know, how are these funded? What do you do to start one? Because it sounds amazing. And I have actually toured the International Clubhouse in New York. That was quite many, many years ago, but a great experience. So I do want to get to that as well. So I did not mean to interrupt you. Well, actually, yes, I did, because I wanted to make sure. Or if you weren't finished, Chad, please finish what you were saying. But I definitely want to get to Nishi and Margaret sharing their experience, but then get to the how-tos as well.
And you're always welcome to interrupt. I could talk about Clubhouse for hours and days, as both Mindy and Karina know. So with no further ado, I think I'd love to hear from Margaret and Nishi about some of the things that have Clubhouse have maybe helped them to take steps outside of the club.
Why don't I go first? I can just tell you that through my experience here in the clubhouse, I started attending community meetings or committee meetings here within the clubhouse and started taking on some leadership roles and being supportive of other members personally and emotionally, and just realized that I wanted to do more of that kind of task work or work. And subsequently, I've now been able to go back to work as a peer support specialist, and I work for a local county mobile crisis team. And I've been doing that for over a year. And prior to that, I worked for a telephone warm line, as they call them, here in Minnesota also. And I'm now in the process of looking for a new job. So for me, my experience was crucial to here in the clubhouse for me getting back up on my feet and through recovery enough so that I can turn it around and then, give it back to other people now.
Beautiful. Nishi?
Yeah, my experience with the clubhouse, I've only been there for about a year or so now. And so I have yet to really reap fully reap the benefits that Margaret is talking about. But I feel like being at the clubhouse has, well, let me put it this way. If I had not been in the clubhouse at all, my life would be even more of a wreck. Like I would not be in recovery. I would just be a complete and total wreck. Like the day I went to a club, I had never told anybody this before, but the day I toured the clubhouse, I had a meltdown at my house because I had I had some bad experiences with a job, and I had some financial problems with my bank account being closed because of some things like bills I couldn't pay, and and I just was just melting down, and I was like, just it was terrible. And my arms worker, he managed to still come and take me there, and ever since then, it's just been an upward journey. It's been an upward journey. Like, I mean, things have still been rough, but it's not because of the being in the clubhouse, right? It's because of other extenuating factors that have nothing to do with the clubhouse. And one of the things that I've put my strongest efforts into the clubhouse is, advocating and helping make decisions, and putting my energy into making the sort of clubhouses organized, because I feel like it's a way I can put my energy into something other than myself.
One thing that Nishi's story illustrated that I don't think you can say about any other part of the mental health system, there's no waiting list. You can that day have a meltdown and decide to go to a clubhouse, and you are in, and you can come back. So Randy, your son, if he should want to go back to a clubhouse, he's still a member. He doesn't have to wait or even fill out that little bit of paperwork that he did the first time he went. So Margaret, maybe you could start us off with how to start a clubhouse, because I remember being at Vail and talking with members out in the beautiful backyard of that clubhouse. And you were the first one to say, take me, I want to help. So can you remember exactly how we started?
Well, Mindy, you were so enthusiastic that you just drew me right to yourself. I really had been advocating for starting another clubhouse in Ramsey County for a number of years here at the clubhouse, but because of different strategies or different financial decisions or difficulty in finding a place in Ramsey County, predominantly in St. Paul, we just hadn't been able to get it going. But realizing with you and your group could be that extra effort that we needed, I just saw easily how much fun it would be to work with you. And that's really why I signed up with you that day. And as I promised you that day, I told you that I would be there for the first day in opening, and I was.
You were. And actually I wasn't. I was out of town. So I missed that ribbon cutting, but I'm so glad you were there. Well, one thing we did, I will say, is we met with all of the Ramsey County commissioners, one by one in their districts, and we let them pick the coffee house that we were going to meet at. So organizing and trying to get the buy-in of the elected officials in the county is really important. I'll have to say they haven't yet given us any money, but we're working on that. They will at some point soon. But Margaret went to, I think, all but one of those meetings with those county commissioners. And that was like essential for getting the support, was to have someone like Margaret, who was a member, who's an expert in clubhouses, because the rest of us weren't. We didn't really know much about clubhouses, those of us in NAMI Ramsey County when we started, but that was absolutely essential. And then the clubhouse, Vail and Karina and Chad took over several months later. We did that groundwork with the county, but then we brought in the professionals, and there's help with clubhouses. So maybe Karina or Chad, you could talk about that. What kind of help comes from Clubhouse International, if for those like Mimi in Washington State who might want to start a clubhouse? How would they get help to know even what to do?
Right. And do you need, do you need a house? Vail Communities has a lot of services. I've seen your website. It's vailcommunities.org. Is that right? Yeah, it is. Vail, VAIL communities.org. And if you want to know about the clubhouse, there's a /clubhouses for this, but there's a lot on the website. So like, do you need a home? Do you have, I know Mimi, just before we turn to Karina and Chad. So Nick has never been in a clubhouse. Is that because there aren't any in your community?
No, actually, since I've lived up in Washington, they did open a clubhouse in the town Centralia where Nick lives. It's kind of a sad little storefront. I don't think, the mental health center runs it. I don't think it has much funding. I did bring Nick over there one time, thinking this could be a good thing. And he didn't like the interior decoration, so that was a no.
That's the
And
problem with being from an artistic family. Mimi's
yeah,
a
he was like,
painter, her
no,
son is a
this isn't for
painter.
me. He was like, this isn't for me. It's too dingy. I go, fine. We could paint it. We could make a mural. We could do something. But that's what he used as his excuse. It's not the most inspiring place in the world, but I continue to keep trying to bring him there. And they did it on the same Clubhouse model. It's just a real scaled back one.
Yeah. So okay. Thank you. So I'm glad. All right. So back to Karina or Chad, wanting to know, where do you begin? How does Clubhouse International help you? What were the next steps after getting the county commissioners on board?
Well, I think one of the things that I can speak to is the strategy around the fundraising and the relationship building that needs to take place in your community to get it off the ground. I think Chad would be the perfect person to talk about Clubhouse International and how they can come in and really provide the level of training, education, support ongoing for a new clubhouse getting up and going. I think in our situation, and probably in most situations, it's back to what Mindy said. You're really trying to build those relationships with people who care deeply about their own community and that the people that they represent thrive. They want their citizenry to thrive. And so their buy-in and their understanding of what it could be like when this is present versus what it's like when it's not is really where you begin. And we were very fortunate. We started our funding journey by being defunded. And I know that sounds very odd, but we were defunded by one of the counties for an existing clubhouse. As a result of that defunding, and this was on my first day. My first day, I heard that we were losing $500,000 a year for one of our locations because the county was going in a different direction. And we all understand in the midst of all the pressure serving individuals with mental illness that there are lots of competing demands. So we made the decision not to close that site and to figure out some way to keep it open until we could refund it. And the first thing we did was to tell all the members at both locations. This is what's different about the clubhouse from any other part of the mental health system, is the membership and the staff met together and they figured out a creative way that they could go back and forth between the two existing clubhouses to make it work, that they would combine their population as members, they would combine the staff, and they would come up with a schedule to go back and forth. And this was all the members driving this. So we took that story to the state of Minnesota, the Department of Human Services, and said, where else are you going to find clients, members, residents, and programs driving the solution like this? And they funded us to refund the Minneapolis site and expand into St. Paul for a new site. Had it not been for them being able to see the way the community worked together, solved issues together, came together, supported each other. And this wasn't a beautiful, smooth process. It was messy and bumpy, and we had lots of decisions to make, but they drove that. And that is probably the best advice I have, is to make sure it's not you, the leader of the organization, talking. It's not you, the director of the program, talking. It is making sure that the community and the leaders in the community hear directly from the individuals most impacted by the clubhouse being there or not. And that they did that, they drove that, they solved this. We just kind of went along for the ride. So, and I have to give it to Margaret. She was there from the very beginning. Nishi was there at the end. In fact, when we broke our fundraising record for Clubhouse Giving Day this year, I think Nishi was a part of pouring ice water on my head and Chad's, if I'm not mistaken. Margaret, you may have missed that. Anyway, there's a video somewhere that we're going to try to hide. But Chad, could you talk a little bit about how Clubhouse International supports new clubhouses when they begin?
Sure. And I just want to point out that the core of how a clubhouse starts and succeeds both is made up right here in this screen. Largely family members, people with lived experience, and people passionate about trying to find a solution that actually works. Because I think, sometimes it gets lost in all of this that, this is one of the moments that I'm most proud of. That I'm not just doing this as a professional, being a talking head about this treatment or that therapy, this thing that's really, groundbreaking. I'm actually having my colleagues, Margaret and Nishi, putting the rubber to the road and saying, hey, it's my life. This works. That makes a huge difference. And I think that's at the core of how clubhouses start and how they succeed. And Mimi, I just kind of put out there, if the clubhouse in your community isn't doing that, you and your son have a voice, and please reach out to the clubhouse director, the executive director, the program that's running it, and say, this doesn't do it. It's not working. Because truthfully, that's what a clubhouse is meant to be, and that's how they are most successful.
Yeah, and
Now,
I don't want to diss our clubhouse. Like I said, we went in there a couple years ago when it first opened, and it was really about Nick not wanting to. And that's a problem I have with him, is getting him to make connections with peers. But yes, I think I am, now that we're talking here, that's in the back of my mind since we started, is I got to go back over there.
Yeah. So to that ends, I think one of the things that I most appreciate about Clubhouse and Clubhouse International is that you're not alone, either in the clubhouse. That's the tagline that Clubhouse all started out with. We are not alone, which, it is what the clubhouse is. And beyond that, every clubhouse is not alone on its own trying to make this clubhouse model work. There are clubhouses, like I said, around the globe. This international agency not only helps clubhouses like ours, and we've been around for 40 years. We haven't opened a clubhouse in over 30. So we needed somebody to help us say, hey, here are the nuts and bolts. And they did a couple of day training. Margaret and I and a couple of vested folks from Ramsey County sat down and figured out this is what we're going to do. And we've done that. We've worked that plan through the course of the last 6 months. We've got a mentor from Clubhouse International. We've got a Clubhouse International seminar in Florida coming up in a couple of months. We do Clubhouse International trainings at other training-based centers. So really the point is that you're not alone in trying to make this model go. You have these colleagues around the globe who are there cheering you on and saying, steal all my best ideas, because it's all good. If you do it better than we do, great, then we can get better. I want to just highlight one of the things that means, I've said accreditation a couple of different times. So Clubhouse International has an accrediting body that goes from clubhouse to clubhouse every 3 years to say, yep, you're doing clubhouse, or no, you're not. And that clubhouse accreditation isn't, some sort of professional who's got all the letters in their name, but it's a staff and a member, just like you're seeing today, going out and evaluating that space, saying, yeah, this is a clubhouse. And through that, we all get better. So, you know, one of our clubhouses, Hopkins, is going to have accreditation here in about a month and a half. And, you know, just like anybody being evaluated, everybody's kind of anxious. But think about any time in your life when you've actually had somebody who could know what you're trying to do come in and say, hey, here's some good ideas to maybe try. It's a gift. It's a gift that most organizations don't have. And so I guess I'll just highlight and stop talking there so that we can hear from maybe Nishi or someone else.
Yeah, well, Nishi's been unmuted for a few minutes, so I'm assuming that means you want to talk about pouring ice water on Karina's head. I'm not sure, but that was when you got unmuted. So
Yeah, no, I just I wanted to say that was a very fun time, very interesting time for all of us. Like you can imagine. Um, yeah, I have so much to say about the clubhouse and so much that I could add on from what I don't want to take time from you, Margaret, or anybody else. I don't want to stage hog. I don't want to hog the stage, and you know, this isn't about me. I want to just
well,
about.
it is a little about you. I mean, can you tell us what's a day like for you at the clubhouse?
Well,
a good day.
A good day is a good day at the clubhouse means that I get to hang out with people I like. I can get to like, you know, work on projects, you know, have a good meal. It's really just about the community, and also um there are so many opportunities of cool things to do at the clubhouse. I got to go camping, you know, I got to go to random towns in Minnesota and just spend the day there. You know, I get to there's possibilities of I might be leading an event at the Ramsey County, you know, on Friday. At least that's my plan, assuming I can get my act together and actually get it going. But you know, but there are people helping me with that, and that's the most important part is that they're helping me, you know, like you know, and I want to talk about the history theater, Chad, because you brought up the theater thing and that I'm doing, and I that's not exactly the only reason that I got into. So long story short, I found my way into a local theater nonprofit thing that does things for because I'm Indian, so it's like the Indian community in Minnesota, and part of like a big reason of why I am of how I'm so successful there, it has to do with the history theater because I mean these people were very gracious. It was totally unconnected to Clubhouse, but then I invited them to history theater, and I think that is the moment when they started taking me really, really seriously. You know, I think that is the moment they were like, this guy has potential, you know, because the history theater, for those who don't know, is in our community in the clubhouse, we have a collaboration with the local history theater, which is literally plays about Minnesota history or Minnesota issues and, you know, things like that. They did one about the famous mansion Duluth, you know, Glen Sheen Mansion. They did a whole bunch of stuff. And so the collaboration is that we get up there. Well, actually, we have, before we even get up on stage, we have members of the history theater, like official playwrights and people like that who act in shows. They come and they do like a prompt type thing where, you know, we kind of jot down stories about our lives or prompts that get us thinking about mental illness in relation to our lives. And, you know, it really
So
depends.
it's not just Minnesota history, but it's personal history. And so somebody act out your life. Is that?
No, we get to come up and actually present about it. Like we read these things.
Wow. I mean, I'm an actor by trade. This is fascinating to me. I love
this
it.
is ringing Randy's bell, so you get to go on, Nishi. She's on the stage all the time.
Person after my own heart. The history theater basically like they have acting elements, but it's like we read our stories and then they will enact certain things. And you know, there was a really wonderful moment when somebody was telling a story about some prank that they did, and that person came out. One of the clubhouse staff came out enacting that prank, and it was fantastic. You know, things like that. You know, or like somebody told a story about the time they were in the army. I think it was Richard who told a story about the time he was in the army, and he was and they enacted that out and he got to enact it out with another person. They got to enact like the opening of like this is where it's at, and then this is the location, and it was where else are you going to find
That's
that, right?
That's
And
huge. And we could probably do a whole show on that. When Mimi and I went to the schizophrenia symposium, Laura Pogliano put in our books a book in our goodie bags, a book about how the arts helps our brain. So I think this is right up the alley. I know that in Connecticut for a while, we had an improv group that was all people with a mental illness diagnosis. And being able to laugh together, to have those experiences together, that's fantastic. So it sounds like a really good day. Margaret, can you give us briefly a typical day for you, other than advocating and fundraising? Sounds like you're big into that.
Well, because I work 20 hours a week, I rarely get back to the clubhouse very often. But when I do, I come in and I'm welcomed. People remember me. They remember my name. They ask me how I am. There's a real sense of community. I tell people it's like walking into the Cheers bar.
Aw.
If you remember the show Cheers.
it is
How everybody knows your name and they ask you how you're doing. It's that kind of sense of community and sense of belonging that is so needed in our society now. There's been studies that have shown that we're all so lonely and that we're missing that sense of community and belonging. I think that past generations have had. And so in fact, I was just talking to Chad today about something that's coming up on Thursday that I'm going to take time off and make sure that I come over here for, because for me, this is a way that I re-energize myself to keep going in my job and in my life in general, is by coming over here and being around all the people that I've known.
To kind of tie in the circle of how to start a clubhouse, the stories that Nishi and Margaret and other members of the clubhouse tell so eloquently and poignantly were part of we had community meetings that Vail Communities organized, and in different parts of the community, making sure we brought in all the communities in our area. And the centerpiece of each one of those community meetings, which was to get support all over the county for the clubhouse, the centerpiece was the stories that people told. And Margaret and Nishi both told stories at different ones of those meetings. And I think that comes through in this whole program, that is what gets the support for clubhouses, is hearing the stories and how it changes lives.
Awesome. So we're actually nearing the end of our hour. So I just want to go around one more time and give everybody a chance. Is there anything a point you wanted to make that we didn't give you a chance to make? What do you most want listeners to know? Your opening day was when? I know Mindy.
May 22nd. We actually had the grand opening on the 21st, and then the clubhouse open on the 22nd. We've had more than 50 different members into the club in less than a month.
Wow.
That was the 22nd of what month?
May. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're just
Awesome.
a little over a month old.
Wonderful. So Chad, while you've got the microphone, any last words last words of wisdom or advice that you want to share?
I would just say that, a clubhouse is possible in your community. And I think for so many people who talk about the way that the system or the way that their loved ones are not, their needs are not met, or the system fails them, I think one of the things that's drawn me to the clubhouse, and that I think would draw anybody who had that community in their community, is that it works, is that it fills those gaps and creates a space of hope and possibility. And I think that can be a space that's 10 members strong a day. That could be a space like Fountain House in New York City that's 200 and some members strong a day. It works in communities across the globe, and I think it could work in communities that are sorely in need right now.
Thank you. Karina, anything to add? Then we'll do Nishi, then Margaret, then Mimi, Mindy, and I'll close it out.
I would just encourage anyone who's really passionate about this to be bold, to not let discouraging news make you want to give up, to keep pushing through, because people's lives matter and you can't stop. And you just, when you keep going and push through some of the hardest times together, that's where the magic happens. And it's rarely smooth, but it's a wonderful thing, and it's very, very possible. But be bold and don't give up.
Thank you. And the first step would actually be to go to the International Clubhouse website and see, they probably have instructions there, how to begin, how to open a clubhouse. So we'll put that in the show notes. Nishi, final word?
I have many final words, but
I'm sure you do.
what?
I love it that you love it so much. That's great.
Thank you for that. Probably the biggest things I would have to say as takeaways from this podcast, and just in general, like my biggest takeaways for the clubhouse are the voluntary aspect and the community aspect. Because, well, going for the voluntary aspect, I can't stress how much I love this enough. There is no pressure. There is no, like, when you have programs with people with disabilities, it's always about, like, taglines like productive members of society, and like, what the heck does that even mean, right? In the clubhouse, you can go there, get a cup of coffee, sit by yourself around other people or talk with other people for a few minutes. You can get up, leave, you can do, and it can be that simple. Hey, I want to get some chocolate at the snack bar or something, or get a bubbly or some coffee. And then you sit there. Maybe you were depressed at home and you come there. I mean, I do that sometimes. I just go there, and I just there to be there. And then I, maybe leave. But you can do that all the way up to what we're doing now and beyond. You can become a board of directors. You can become a board of the sky is the limit. And I love that so much, because the value of freedom that it places on people, you can just be like, I'm not ready for this. That's fine. I am ready for this. That's fine. There aren't any other places like that I can think of.
Beautiful. Thank
And
you.
also the other aspect I want to touch on is the community aspect, because we all kinds of people in our clubhouses, all kinds of people, and of different backgrounds, whether it's cultural or otherwise, or whatever. It's like people, they come together and they're very harmonious. There's almost never been an instance of like a conflict or a fight or anything like I've seen in the clubhouse. And then when it does happen, it's usually resolved in a very healthy manner. And there are spaces where people can talk about it, and people will talk about it. Members will come to other members and say, like, hey, you need to knock this off, or hey, like, this thing that you're doing isn't really working. And that, where else are you going to find it where that's something like that works so well?
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. That's wonderful. Margaret, anything to add to that? Then
No, I think everybody's covered everything as far as I'm concerned. Everyone has done a great job tonight. I'm happy to be part of it. And thank you so much for doing this, Randy.
thank you. Mimi?
Yes.
Well, I'm fired up now. I'll go home next week. Nick and I are going over there and
That's
see what
fantastic.
we can do about a little bit of interior decoration.
Yeah,
They will.
it's funny because my son Ben, ever since that first year, it's a stigma thing for him. Oh, I don't want, because I don't have schizophrenia, so why would I be part of this clubhouse? So that is a thing. But if I said, you know what, they need you, is much more meaningful to him than you need this. So if it were like, well, they really need an editor for the literary magazine, maybe you could just come, like, so maybe if Nick is, I don't, we can't give each other advice, but we do on our text. But but I think it's like if he's brought in, like, oh, I wonder if we could help this clubhouse look better, it doesn't always work. It's a thing, but let us know what happens.
I will.
Hey, Mindy, has Jim gone yet, or is he going to join the clubhouse, or we don't know
Jim
yet?
has not been yet. That's a work in progress. But I will say for Mimi's Clubhouse in Washington, if they have any sense at all, they would be accepting decorating help from both Mimi and Nick, because they are like professional painters. I mean, this
Unbelievable.
would be something that you'd have to pay for from anybody else. So, but the one thing I will add for people that are listening who might want to start a clubhouse that we haven't touched on and we don't have time to touch on it, but a big part of getting started was seed money. We didn't get money from the county, but we did get money from the state. And we had legislation, I think 4 bills and 3 passed. And so those are things, if anybody is interested in starting a clubhouse, they should get in touch with Karina and Chad about what did we do at the legislature, because they were essential and key things. And these two are masters of sharing. I'm sure they will be sharing with you what we did there.
All right. I'm so glad you brought that up. And, with that in mind, I haven't mentioned them, but, Mindy's book is Fix What You Can, which is her story with Jim, but also all the lawmaking she was doing at the time in the state legislature. Nick's self-portrait is on the cover of Mimi's book. He came in with it, so you can see what an incredible artist he is. And you can check out Mimi's artistry work also at miriam-feldman.com. And my book's a memoir with prescriptive information. The updated version is available on audiobook, and it's called Ben Behind His Voices. And I just want to thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I can't wait to get this episode, and keep us posted on how the Clubhouse is doing.
Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks for joining us for this episode of Schizophrenia, 3 Moms in the Trenches with Randy Kay, Mindy Greiling, and Miriam Feldman. To get in touch with us or to learn more about our books, please visit our websites at miriam-feldman.com, mindygreiling.com, or randykay.com.